Greetings my lovelies, and thank you for stopping by the circle today. This week's review is a book that I absolutely love. It's one of my all-time favorites. I really wanted to talk about it because the series as a whole is celebrated, or has celebrated, its 25th anniversary. So today I'm going to talk about Lyrael by Gareth Nix. So let's get started. Now, Lyrael is the second book in the Abortion series, the first book being Sabriel and the last one being actually Abortion. And it is a very fantastical world that I fell in love with probably around middle school, late middle school, early high school, I really kind of want to say, but I'm not 100% sure on it. Anywho's, it's a fantastical world with a really interesting magical system, a rich and complex history that we really don't get to see too much of, and honestly, it's just one of my most favorite worlds, and this is my most favorite character. So let's go ahead and talk about a bit of the background so you can understand the world, the rules, and a bit of the premise. I am going to give you a small warning because I do not think that I can talk about this second book without spoiling things for the first book. So if you haven't read Sabriel and you care about spoilers, go get it. Library purchase, whatever, borrow from somebody, read it, and then come back. If you have, then hey, we're good. If you haven't and you don't care about spoilers, let's keep on rolling. So in this world, there's a country that is split in two by pretty much a magical Hadrian's Wall. You have the Old Kingdom in the north that has kind of an interesting world, let's say the least. People can use these runes called charter marks. Everyone kind of has one on their forehead as a sort of christening, and it is their connection to the magic force of that world. Now there are two kind of like opposing magical forces in that world. You have the necromancers and free magic people, which are kind of like the corrupted version, and then you have the abortion and the seers that sort of keep everything else in check, and the abortion's job is to lay the dead to rest. Now the afterlife in this world is pretty interesting because it basically involves a river and a series of waterfalls, and the abortion has the ability to enter into the netherworld, travel through it via the use of these magic bells they ring, and they all have like a series of names and magic abilities to find out what's going on, to maybe find somebody who has died, to sort of like, you know, see what's happened, and to fight the monsters and demons that live in said area. However, you have to be careful because every time you step into the river, it starts to leech away your life force because that's its job. Now, south of the wall you have what's kind of like the New Kingdom, and it is the modern kingdom. It is very what you would imagine, I'd probably say like 1920s or 30s London to be like. You have technology, electricity, so on and so forth. However, the closer you get to the wall, the less reliable your technology is because there's no technology above the wall. The wall kind of like the magic on the other side of the wall disrupts and distorts all technology. So sometimes if the wind is blowing in from the north, then your power may not cut on. And the seasons are also different between the two worlds. It's never really explicitly stated as why, because it all is essentially like one land mass. Just one part has magic and one part doesn't. If it's spring in the New Kingdom, it's like winter in the Old Kingdom. It's kind of weird, but really cool. So, and to the addition to abortion, you have these sort of clan of women called the Clare. And they're like oracles, prophetesses, ooh, could not say that one. Basically, they can see the future. However, they can only catch fragments of it. But the stronger their connection is to the site, the stronger and more clear their images will be. And sometimes they'll gather in like large groups to try to focus and channel their power in order to be able to see a clearer image. And that is where we are introduced to Lyrael. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop there, and we're gonna go ahead and talk about the premise of this book since you may not have the backstory. So Lyrael is one of the daughters of Clader. She doesn't have the sight even though she's older. Most of the kids get a much younger, and she's really struggling with her identity. The king is back. He's been lost for a while, but he came back, and his queen and wife, is the current abortion. So Lyrael doesn't really feel like she belongs because she doesn't look like the Clader. They're all kind of blonde hair, blue-eyed, with tan skin, and she is pale with dark eyes and dark hair, much like another character in the series. But I think that's pretty much enough that you guys really need to know to kind of get a generalized idea of the story. So let's go ahead and talk about the characters and players in it, alright? So of course the main character is Lyrael. She, like I said, is a sightless Clader. She's struggling to find her place. She hates herself. She doesn't feel like she belongs. And she does attempt to unalive herself at some point in time. But the long and the short of it is she ends up in the library where she can sort of hide the fact that she's not like everyone else, and she actually becomes a very powerful charter mark mage, to the point where she creates this being called Dog using a mix of charter magic and free magic. Ooh, it is scary. But Dog, as it turns out, is a lovely companion to Lyrael. She's grumpy, she's a mutt, it's all good to go, and they have a lot of adventures in the library until Lyrael has to leave. Now another one of the characters that we have is Sam. And Sam is Sabriel's and the king's son. Sabriel wants him to follow in her footsteps and become the next abortion because his older sister is in line for the throne. He, however, does not want to. He has a great fear of the dead. He's never been able to go to the river. He has no calling for it. He likes to make things. And so what he decides to do is that he decides to run away one day to avoid his fate and live a life fanciful and free as I don't know what, because he doesn't even have a clear enough image of it himself. But shit hits the fan. He ends up running into Lyrael and they go on this grand adventure together. Now we do see recurring characters of Sabriel, and I cannot remember the king's name to save my life. I'll throw it up here when I do some more research. And we also get to see Mogget again. And Mogget is this free magic being bound in service to the abortions through a leather necklace, but he can change his shape, which is really kind of cool. So sometimes he appears as a dwarf when he needs to really move, but most of the times he's a cat, because I think that's close enough to his actual, like, personality. Our main villain in this, well, our main villain I say because there is another one that is kind of larger, but he doesn't really come into play later. He's kind of like a sleeping Thanos or whatever. But our main villain is Hedge, who is a necromancer and free sorcerer who kidnaps Sam's friend Nicholas under the guise of experimenting in the Old Kingdom to try to find what this magic his friend keeps talking about is, and his life force ends up feeding into this great monster to bring it back from its bindings from like forever ago. Like when I say forever ago, I mean like Lyrael has to go so far into death to figure out how to destroy this creature that she risks losing her own life because it is the last step of the death journey. So like I said, there's like several gates and this is the last one. Now she has to fight the urge to look up and vanish into the great unknown in order to find out how to defeat this monster. We do see some other characters that were in the original Sabriel that are also come back into play, but they play like a much minor role. Even Sabriel and the king himself play a much smaller role in this book than between Lyrael and Sam. And technically, you can count those two as the two main characters, but since we're introduced to Lyrael first and her name is on the title, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's her book. So, without any further ado, final thoughts. While I thoroughly enjoyed Sabriel when I read it, like I said, the world and magic system is amazing. There's this richness and complexity that is in all of Gareth Nix' works. I have yet to read something of his that I don't really like, with maybe the exception of one book. But I really did resonate more with Lyrael. She doesn't really feel like she belongs in her world with her people, her clan, her family, because she doesn't look like them, she doesn't have the same abilities as they do, and she finds solace working in the library and just kind of pursuing her own interests. Now, as an avid bookworm myself, I would have loved to have been in that library with like its thousands of different layers and histories and dangers, because the librarians also serve as the first line of defense for wayward books and monsters that have been sealed away. I mean, like, there is this one free magic creature that's like a silver praying mantis, and oh my goodness, is this thing scary. But I can also understand Stam's motives of not wanting to live his life based off someone else's expectations, and he kind of comes into his own as an interesting sort of like mix later on. There you have it, a brief, hopefully spoiler minimal review of Lyrael by Gareth Nix. I will probably be rereading this series at some point while I also search for the special edition anniversary one. I really kind of want the one from Australia because it's so pretty. I just don't know how to get it. If you know, comment down below and let me know. And if you want to know what else I'm doing or what else I'm reading or just kind of the general fuckery that I get into, be sure to check out my social media links rolling across the screen and are listed down below. If you have a book or manga or comic or anything that you would like for me to read and review, again, drop a comment, let me know. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and be sure to hit that bell to subscribe. I'm fairly consistent with my postings. It depends on my day job and if I have any other technical difficulties, but for the most part I post once a week, typically on a Wednesday. But before I step off, I do have a couple of last little things that I want to talk about. Number one, Nanowrimo is coming back. Yes, it is that time again for us to make ourselves suffer to spit out a 50,000 word novel in 1 month. Am I participating in Nanowrimo? Yes, because I don't know how to say no to things and I like to torture myself. 2. Will I be writing an entire book in Nanowrimo? That is a no on that one. I am, however, starting the 3rd book of my Tale of Blades in Darkness series. The 50,000 will get me pretty much most of the way through the book, but it will not be complete by the end of NaNoWriMo, but I will still count it as a win if I hit that 50,000 mark. I have yet to do it, and by golly am I going to this year. I have to. Like, if I can write 10,000 words in 1 day to finish book 2, I need to be able to write 50,000 words to nearly complete book 3. And speaking of book 2, segues. In 2 weeks, like around Halloween, I will be doing the cover reveal for The Hidden Temple, which is book 2 of A Tale of Blade in Darkness. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, here's the first book. You can find it linked on my Amazon page down below, and I will also link somewhere the release video for the first book. And when I reveal the cover, that is when I will reveal its release date, because I do have a few final things that I need to sort of hammer down before I can give an actual release date. Am I later than I initially wanted to? Yes, but unfortunately that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So, oh well. So, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and step off, and you guys have a lovely week, and I will see you next time. Bye!